they could just make billions and billions of dollars of free cash flow. We basically scaled that to $0 to $100 million in sales in like 14, 15 months. That got us in Walmart and Target, and we were basically the biggest toy in America. If I do this, I go 4 for 4, and then nobody can question me, because I basically said Von Dutch would be the biggest clothing brand. You might have saw that. I did. Yep. I said Gel Blaster would be the biggest toy brand. It was. I said we would make Pudgy Penguins the number one. We did. And now I'm saying Abstract will be the number one L2. If I go 4 for 4, then it's like, it's insane. I'm here to be the biggest and the best. And I haven't said it publicly, so this is the first time he's hit it, but I say it to myself all the time. Everyone finds success at some point. The difference between those that do and don't is...
Luca Netz is a serial entrepreneur with experience scaling global brands in fashion, toys, consumer tech, and crypto. Most recently, after a 2.5 million acquisition, became CEO of Pudgy Penguins, the leading content IP on mainstream media. He's only 26, but has since become the face of crypto, leading the change in our financial system. From homeless to making his first million, this is You Make It Look Easy with Luca Netz. You good with your mic, Luca?
I'm good.
All right, let's jump straight into it, Luca. I'm so happy to have you here. The
nice
last
to see you
time
again.
we met was a year ago. It was a panel, and this year we take it up one notch. I want to start off by asking you a question. For those that are around you, closest to you, how do you think that they would describe Luca?
Stressed and busy. Stressed and busy. I think that'd probably be how my girlfriend and my mom describe me, and they're probably the two closest to me in my personal life. So that's probably the two words. And then I'd probably describe myself as stressed, busy, fulfilled, happy. Probably be how I describe myself.
I want to be first to call it here that I see you as the Web3 Elon Musk, and I'll share with you why. Elon Musk didn't start Tesla. He came in as an investor. He built it. He's the face of it. He's doing electric cars, rocket, solar panels, tunneling. You didn't build Pudgy Penguins. You came in as, I was the savior. You invested in it. Now you guys are doing L2, gaming, IP licensing. What's your take when people compare you to Elon Musk?
It's one of the first times I've actually been compared a couple times, but I'm really flattered. The first time in person somebody's done it, so I'm flattered. Obviously, I think Elon Musk, if you're a young entrepreneur, I just don't know how you can't look up to a guy like that. I definitely see the synergy and the idea of kind of like acquiring and coming into things. So I'm actually not a really good 0 to 1 person. This is probably not public knowledge, but I'm actually not a great ideas guy. But I'm a really great 1 to 100 person. So Pudgy Penguins was a testament to that. Gel Blaster was a testament to that. Von Dutch was a testament to that. So it's kind of my niche here. I would like to be what Elon Musk was for tech companies in Silicon Valley. I would love to be that for crypto. And obviously, I think when it comes down to building a personal brand and being that figure, I definitely realized that early on into the Pudgy Penguin career that for us to get where we wanted to be, I need to play a vocal role. And I think just more businesses in general, I think, are pivoting to more of a founder-led and public-facing, style model because it works, right? And I guess if there's founders who have things to hide, they probably don't do it. But I think if you're a founder and you want to wear your business on your sleeve, it only can be a positive EV. So,
before we jump into the meat of it, I want to ask you a question. If you had to describe Pudgy Penguins to someone who has not seen Pudgy Penguins before, does not know what Pudgy Penguins do, remove the crypto lingo, how do you help me describe it to them?
Pudgy Penguins is the face of penguins around the world. We'll just keep it that simple. When you think penguins, I want people to think Pudgy Penguins. And if we're going to, bring in the crypto side of it, which I think I always try to, because the origins of penguins is crypto. I think our two goals is 1, be the face of penguins around the world, and 2, be the mascot for crypto. And ultimately, like, what does it mean to have a character represent the entire space? I think no character represents or brand represents crypto better than Pudgy Penguins. And then I think from an IP perspective, people love penguins, and right now there isn't a penguin that you can think of when you think, or a penguin brand that you can think of when you think penguin. So those are the 2 places I really want to capture. And then ultimately, from like a community and brand perspective, like just really want to make a positive impact on the world. I think it's a message that a lot of people can get behind. A part of what we do is really around like public goods and public service. Our content is there to uplift people. Our products are there to make people happy. So there's definitely a couple different angles you could twist it, and I would probably, depending on who I was speaking to, I would know which one would resonate with them more, and I'd probably hone in on one of those depending on the person. So the easiest way to somebody who knows nothing about crypto is to be like, hey, I'm building a penguin brand that's going to be the face of penguins around the world.
I want to roll back the years to the early days. I think the story of you growing up homeless with your mom for 9-10 of years, switching between states, living in one beders. How has that experience affected you in your entrepreneurship journey?
I think it taught me how to be really stress tolerant, and it gave me a lot of perspective on different people. So, we weren't homeless in the sense that we were pushing a cart, but we didn't have a home to call ourselves. We were just staying guest bedroom to guest bedroom, couch to couch, whoever would let us stay at the time. So 14 different places in 10 years. And I was in a lot of different environments. I was in some of the worst hoods in the world. And then I was also in some of the most expensive neighborhoods in the world. What a huge transition, right? So, we spent like a year in the Hamptons, and that was awesome, and then we'd be, in some of the roughest parts of Los Angeles. So I think it gave me a lot of perspective. And I think I have the ability to understand people from many different walks of life, which I think when you're dealing with a borderless international community like Pudgy Penguins, I think gives you a lot of clarity. And then, I've said this, I kind of coined this term early on, but I think NFT projects are publicly traded startups. Yep. They have all the cons of being a startup and all the cons of being publicly traded with probably none of the pros. And it's stressful. Like, I'm not going to pretend I've had huge SaaS businesses, huge info businesses, huge consumer product businesses. I've actually been known to be pretty much like an octopus in entrepreneurship. I've been able to do a lot of different things and be in a lot of different industries. This is for sure the hardest, but it has the highest upside. So that upside comes with serious stress. And I think one of the most important characteristics for being an entrepreneur is being stress tolerant. I think the difference between the entrepreneurs that succeed versus the entrepreneurs that fail is the entrepreneurs that succeed seem to be really stress tolerant, and the ones that ultimately end up failing, can't take, the constant pressure or the constant fires and ultimately fold and quit and give up.
I want to take a little page off the psyche of Luca, and you said this in the podcast, and I'll repeat back to you. You said that you like attention, not that you crave it, but you don't like it when you don't have it.
Yeah.
This feels like it's something that came through your childhood and definitely seems like a driving force in it.
Totally.
Describe to me about how that driving force works for you.
Yeah, so I think because I thought about this a lot. So if I rewind kindergarten, first grade, like show and tell, because of our financial situation, there was really nothing to show and really nothing to tell. So I was always kind of like I'll probably give you a reference. My favorite anime is Naruto.
Okay.
And so if you ever watch Naruto, like the first couple, the whole story of Naruto, that always kind of pans back to like him being the lone kid while all the kids were there. Specifically in my younger childhood, again, it wasn't all like horrible. Again, there were situations in which we were like in awesome places. So, I remember specifically first grade, I was actually in the Hamptons, and all the kids there were pretty much well off and rich, and like I was like the only poor kid. And there was this like constant image of me, like when I think of myself when I was younger, of like me, the same scene of like Naruto being over here and all the kids playing and being over here. And actually in school, I was kind of a class clown. And the reason for that is because I think I was like slowly but surely trying to get the attention that I never got like in my earlier years. So there's something about I don't want to be the main character, and I hate like when there's like so much attention. There's like kind of like a balance, but it does really bother me when like nobody's talking about us or nobody's giving us the credit that we deserve. In an industry like this that is so driven by attention and narrative, I think that's probably a really good characteristic for somebody to have. And then probably from a personal life, there's definitely like trauma baked into that, and definitely that needs to be worked on at some point. But as long as I'm at the helm of Pudgy and at the Igloo, I'm probably going to keep that characteristic in place. And then, when my journey's over here, I'll probably work on that side, because it's definitely not the healthiest, but there's definitely some trauma baked in there. Definitely some old thought of me that just remembered being excluded. And now that I'm in a position where I have a voice, it's like I don't ever want to feel like the one out. And even when we first started Pudgy, back to that scene, it felt like, Pudgy was Naruto Uzumaki. All the other collections were here making all this money. All the communities hated at us, laughed at us. Now, like, whoa, have the tides have turned. It feels like all the collections are looking at us like the nine-tailed fox. This is going too far down the Naruto rabbit hole, if you've seen it, this makes a lot of sense. Yep. So yeah, that's an interesting quote that you brought up. I'm fascinated that you brought that one up.
No, I mean, when you said it, it felt so real.
Yeah.
Like it's not something that someone can just quote off a book. You have to live through it to be able to say that, and say it with such poise and confidence that it doesn't seem like a weakness.
Right.
The ability to recognize that ends up being a strength, right?
Yeah.
We talked a little about you being an octopus, being able to be adaptable, and I think you've done that like numerous times, right? All the way from ring, all the way to online jewelry, gel blaster. What kind of experience do you think that gave you in terms of how that shaped into how you run Pudgy Penguins today?
Well, it's actually funny because we were just at this, Cheryl, our head of APAC, we did like a whole Malaysia blockchain presentation and like masterclass. Yep. And I actually explained this then, but if you go back and kind of see my journey, a lot of it is like really aligned to where we are today. It seems like every business prior to Pudgy led me to Pudgy. So I'll give you the same analogy and the same story that I gave the masterclass group that we hosted just a couple weeks ago, or just a week ago. But if you look at Ring was a tech startup. By the time I left, it had hundreds of employees. So there's something there. It's a big company with a lot of different moving parts, similar to Pudgy, but that's not really that big of a thing. Obviously, e-commerce, selling jewelry online, that stemmed into a bigger business, which was monetizing social influence. Yep. So for 4 years, I basically built brands and products around influencers and celebrities. And I was basically entrenched with all of these, different groups of people. So, I was living in some of the biggest, influencer houses and working with some of the biggest celebrities. And this actually taught me, a really deep understanding about social media and virality. And in its own right, Pudgy Penguins is an influencer, and I'm creating an influencer. And so many of the things that I learned in those 3 to 4 years, I brought over to Pudgy and we're kind of, embodying today. So that business, I think, was super impactful for my learnings into Pudgy. The next one was Von Dutch. So Von Dutch was bringing something back from the dead and bringing it to life. And I think that gave me a ton of confidence into actually being able to do with Pudgy, because I had done that before. I had taken something that had magic that clearly worked at some point in time, and I just revived it. And then, I had my own community for a while. I was an internet entrepreneurship community that I really loved, and we had some crazy huge successes come out of that. And that obviously gave me the comfort to speaking with people who were, a part of my personal ecosystem. Obviously that helps big time in something like Pudgy. And then, the most recent one was Gel Blaster. So North America's fastest growing toy business. We basically scaled that to $0 to $100 million in sales in 14, 15 months. And, that got us in Walmart and Target, and we were basically the biggest toy in America, 2 years ago. And obviously that translated meaningfully into Pudgy Penguins. So if you kind of look at, from Ring to Von Dutch to, my personal communities to Gel Blaster, you kind of piece back, all those, the influencer monetization business. If you kind of piece all of those things, all of those learnings actually play a really pivotal role in what we're doing at Pudgy.
I wanted to say the exact statement. When I was doing, the deep research about it, and I was painting all the dots before onto Pudgy Penguins, I could see a direct relevance to it. The way you took it to Walmart, just like how you did it with Gel Blaster, the way you were working with influencers, the way I think in the early part of your career, media was important. So you started investing in GIFs when no other projects were investing in it, right?
Yep.
One interesting observation was, I think when you were doing the online jewelry business, you mentioned that if you try and get Kendrick Lamar to sponsor you, he would cost you thousands of dollars. So you went the route around. You went to the fan page members where maybe they would only pay you $50 or $100. And that approach is quite similar to how I see you take Pudgy. You don't take the conventional route, but you kind of found a roundabout around it, right? Do you think those kind of had made you not take the conventional route and always try and think out of the box and go around
I think that's just the difference between a good entrepreneur and a bad entrepreneur. How do you problem solve and angleize it? So I think at Pudgy Penguins, a huge part of what we do is proliferate the penguin, right? Which is marketing. And I learned this because a lot of people attribute Bored Ape's success to a bunch of different things, but I attribute it solely, or most importantly, to the marketing, right? All the celebrities changing their profile pictures, being present on the Rolling Stone magazine. This is marketing. And it was done really well at a really high level. And so for us, obviously we didn't come out in the same time of Bored Ape. Bored Ape was at the beginning of the bull run, was able to capture all that value. When we came into Pudgy, we were at basically the end of the bull run. It started off into, what seemed to be, one of the worst bear markets today. And, we just had to create our own virality and marketing. So I think just it's instinctual. There's really no plan or strategy to it. It's just like, hey, I know it works. I extrapolate what works. But, I obviously didn't have the resources. I do have the connections, but I didn't have the financial resources to go and, get these celebrities to change profile pictures and to activate all these whole activations. So I had to do it my own way, which is like create my own moat, right? Through GIFs, through Instagram, through TikTok, through Facebook, through all these different channels. And here we are today. It seemed to have worked pretty efficiently.
It doesn't matter who came first, it matters who last, right?
I used to, it's funny you bring that up because I used to, at Pudgy, we were always first to like a lot of different things. And I used to get so mad when people were copying us. Yeah. It was like a big thing. I was like a whole personal pet peeve for like a whole year. Because I always thought like doing it first is probably the hardest because I value critical thinking a lot. So I'm like, it's easy to go and see somebody do something and go copy it when like the hard part is sitting there in a room like, how do I do something special and unique, like with balancing all these different edge cases, or balancing all these different ways that you can kind of go about things. But now I'm actually of the guys that it's who does it best. It's not who does it first anymore. And actually, I think a huge part of Pudgy's success and ultimately abstract success, which is our L2 that we just announced, is actually the fact that we had second mover advantage, right? So Pudgy, I was able to look at Bored Ape, I was able to look at all these projects that kind of had their peak and kind of had a pretty bad downturn. And I was like, why did that happen? And I know exactly what to avoid. Same thing with the L2s. I mean, it's yet to be seen, but I believe that we'll launch, EVM's, biggest and best L2. And the reason why I think that is because I'm able to look at all the existing L2s and I'm able to see like what went wrong and why aren't you where you need to be? And it gives me a really good place to do things differently and to kind of find a pocket that ultimately gives us our competitive edge, right? So for NFTs, like I knew that, minting new collections, segmented liquidity and fragmented liquidity, and like really what you need if you're gonna, have a successful NFT collection is you need, one concentrated place in which people are, putting their purchasing power, this idea of just taking and not giving and reciprocating value, or, just fragmenting attention and making promises that end up being liabilities and being stuck with those liabilities. Like, there's a lot of things that a lot of people taught us that I know exactly how to position, or if I do decide to go in their direction, I know how to like frame it and I know what to avoid. So I'm actually no longer a big fan of being the first to move. I'm actually taking a lot more patient of approach now that like, most people think we're the first or second or third best NFT project in the world. I'm able to be a lot more calculated and thoughtful today. So, I just wanted to give you that and the anecdote because we had brought it up. And
yeah, I mean, crypto is already new on its own, and it's hard to be the first in a new industry as well, right? And there's a lot of learning costs involved. One thing as I try to look back on your career is, across all the different ventures, maybe after 1-2 years, you move on to the next thing. And I think sometimes that could be a bit of a quote unquote downfall of overachievers, right? I know like you're definitely in that category, always striving and asking a lot for yourself. What's different with Pudgy? It's coming 2 years, 3 years. It's
the competitive nature of it, if I'm gonna be frank. So like part of me did get bored in the previous businesses, like I'm not gonna lie. And Gel Blaster really hit me like a brick road because I thought that was it. I thought that would be the most fulfilling of them all. Because the success story is so big. I mean, I was a consumer product guy. Like I built my reputation and my career in consumer products. So 0 to 100 million in that span of time, like you would think that I would just feel like the man and that it would be great, right? And it just wasn't. And the thing is with Pudgy, it's so competitive. And it's both a strength and a weakness. It's a weakness because realistically, it's my job as a leader to be more unified, especially with like all the different projects in the space. It's a strength because the people who own my NFT know that I'm going to beat everybody else, right? And because I just don't think people are looking at it in the same lens that I am. Like I'm here to be the biggest and the best, and if I'm not the biggest and the best, then I kind of say this phrase. I said, and I haven't said it publicly, so it was the first time he's hit it, but I say it to myself all the time. It's PvP until you're number one. Right? Until you can say whatever you want, but until you're number one, it's PvP. And when I'm number one, I'll be like, yeah, I think I'm number one already. But obviously, in the eyes of some, I still need to be there. And obviously the market cap and things need to reflect that. But that's kind of how I'm looking at it. So it's both a strength and a weakness. And ultimately, I think that's the difference here at Pudgy is it's super competitive and winning has such huge upside, right? Like I know if I win and I bring all that value to my community, I know they're going to reciprocate that, right? Like I'm an entrepreneur. I'm here to build a business. I'm here to change my life just as much as I'm here to change everyone else's. But in crypto, the beauty is like you have to change your community's life and they'll change yours, right? It's a really interesting relationship. So I think from my perspective, it's just the competitiveness is what just excites me here, what keeps me in, because it's like, I can't, AI is so cool. I have like 5 AI businesses that I know would absolutely crush. Like I can't pivot that. Like I've got too many people counting on me, right? To even like divert my focus even a fraction. And 2, right? Like I'm not going to just lose. Like I'm so close, right? I'm so close to winning. And I think once we win, we'll win for a very long time. So I think that's probably the difference, is just the competitiveness of the space.
I can sense that competitiveness from a statement you made in 2023. You said that I will be the face of NFTs. How has that played out?
I think now I don't even want to be the face of NFTs. I want to be the face of crypto. And when I mean I mean the penguin, right? I have no interest in being the face of anything. Obviously, I think that will kind of default happen just because of my personality and the role that I play within the brand and in the company. But I really want Pudgy Penguins to be the face of crypto. And I think we're on that path, right? Like Van Eck Ethereum ETF commercial, Uniswap's changing the profile picture, Van Eck's changing the profile picture. Some of the biggest executives within the crypto industry are wearing penguins and are in the Illuminati. Nobody's getting the impressions and views and selling the amount of product that penguins are doing. So I think we're just doing something that's pretty unparalleled. And I think we're on that path, and I think we'll be there shortly.
Often, I think you've been asked why you made the acquisition of Pudgy's, for 2.5 mil. I don't know if you've been asked this before. What were the other projects that you shortlisted that you decided not to acquire?
Oh, that I decided not to acquire. There was one. So it was actually there was a project that I had helped on prior to Pudgy. It was called Spooky, and I actually tried to buy that from my friend prior. He wasn't having it. He thought he would make it see a bunch of success. It was actually like a really big fight. And then when I was assessing, wasn't in the business of buying an NFT project. I had tried to buy Spooky. He didn't let me buy it. It was a whole debacle. So like I kind of like was thinking about it. I was thinking about how I would do it. So I had some like thought there. And because I was a big Pudgy holder, it wasn't until Beanie made a bid for Pudgy that I step in, and I just thought to myself, like, look, Beanie's great and all, but Beanie, my vision for this, the reason why I'm a big collector is because like I know that this has a chance to be, a huge part of the crypto IP ecosystem. And I just believed in its holder base. I believed in the IP. I believed in the community. And I just didn't think Beanie was the right guy to take that project the way that it was positioned and the way that I saw the vision for. So I ended up making the bid kind of unconsciously. 3 months later, it closed and my life changed forever. I actually didn't think the deal would go through, but I wasn't really in the business of buying NFT projects. Now, today, if you were to ask me, like, what are the 5 NFT projects that I would buy, I've got like a list, right? But like, I wouldn't even think about expanding the ecosystem until Pudgy Penguins was like unequivocally the number one. I think there's something strategic about owning the chessboard. So Yuga actually does this. They're like, basically, if you look at the top 10 NFT projects, they own all of them except for Azuki and Pudgy. That's a smart strategy, but I think also like a liability. Like I think it's a smart strategy if you can manage all of that. I think it's a liability if you can't. And whether I think managing one of these things is incredibly difficult. So like, you have to be like you must have really figured this out. Like it's going to take me years to be like, I can go absorb another one or in a second or a third, what I mean? Like it, it's just too far out right now, but, and we still have a long ways to go.
For us in the space, it's easy for us to understand and, evaluate projects. But for people outside of the space, let's say if these are Web2 VCs, right? How should they evaluate and evaluate Pudgy Penguins? Do they tag you to the multiples of a IP company, a tech company? What's the pitch to a Web2 company?
It's the reinvention of IP. There's a new layer. So I think like current IP businesses, it's just brand and consumer. And I think with this technology, there's a new layer of brand, participant, and consumer. And that participation layer, I think, is super interesting because, if a fan can participate in an ecosystem, they are so much more likely to just embody it and to live it and to breathe it. And it's so much more competitive than having no say and no pull in an ecosystem. So I think it's a reinvention of that. I also think it's a technology business, because the NFT is a piece of underlying technology. And like super layman's terms and super simple terms, I would say, what would Sanrio or Pixar or Disney look like in 2050? And I think we're building it today, right? Like eventually these monopolies are going to go in this direction by the simple fact that, today NFTs and digital products and digital collectibles are like a 90 to 95 to 98% margin business.
Yep.
And so they're missing out on so much value by not really leaning into this and trying to create an ecosystem and a hub for this stuff, because the margin and the business model is too great. And the issue with, a lot of NFT projects today is a lot of NFT projects today thought they could pull that lever and just issue new digital collectibles. But the frank of the matter is they didn't have a big enough ecosystem to do that. But if Disney, for example, or Pixar came in with one of their premier legacy IP like Star Wars and just pointed their entire fan base, and because they've done like instances of this, but like literally said to their entire fan base, this is how it's moving forward, they could just make billions and billions of dollars of free cash flow, because it's just not the same way as kind of what they're currently doing. So I think this is ultimately where everything is headed. And I think the couple players that are here today, depending on who wins, and I think there'll be a couple people who win, whether it's the Igloo Inks or the Yuga Labs or the Chiru Labs, whatever it may be, like a couple of us win. The couple of companies that are going to win here that can survive all the roller coaster will be worth tens of billions of dollars, because we will have established a trust and a foothold in which, a lot of these companies can kind of, use us as like liaisons to kind of get into the space that I think will be really important.
I think what you said before on another episode really resonates. You said that we're in an attention economy, and where the cost of production keeps decreasing, the one thing that is more valuable is time. And, reproduction rates are going down. So the value of people's attention becomes more and more valuable. And you mentioned of the three most important levers: culture, community, and distribution. Two of that are actually not technical. This is culture and community. So I feel like the whole concept of the attention economy is baked into your vision of the Pudgy Penguins.
Yeah. I mean, it starts and stops there. I think like everybody else tries to like reinvent different things, but like if you can't garner attention, whether it's Web 2 attention, Web 3, Web 5 attention, it doesn't really matter the category. If you can't capture attention, you're not going to win.
And because there isn't a direct comparable to what Pudgy Penguins is doing, right? What is the end state? Is it an IPO? Is it an M&A? How should people think about the whole Igloo company in its end state?
I think the Igloo company at its end state is eventually an Igloo. So, for example, Pudgy Penguins is held by the Igloo, and Abstract is, the contributors, is held, by the Igloo. And so I think there's actually an end state where we just really become a machine. An investment arm. The difference between us and other investors is just like an investment arm that actually knows how to do it. So like, how do you have like, can we create the content and the marketing machine to go and plug and play to ideas that we really believe in, and kind of scale horizontally rather than vertically? Obviously having, Pudgy and Abstract and all those ecosystem products being like, the Burj Khalifa of vertical integration and success. But I think if you're looking 5-10 years from now, the Penguins is the face of penguins around the world. There's movies, there's TV shows, there's tons of products, there's Happy Meals, the whole nine. But that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I think, for us, I think the end goal is ultimately like, how can we get, 10 Pudgy Penguins within the Igloo? It has to go there because naturally IP ebbs and flows. So, Pudgy Penguins is on a hot streak right now, and it'll probably be on a hot streak for another couple of years. But IPs don't go on hot streaks for 10, 15 years straight. Like maybe one or two do. And I would love for that to be the case, but like you got to have things that you can kind of cycle in and out within the business. And I think ultimately it's going to really morph into a really meaningful investment arm. But the difference between investors don't really provide any value, and I think we can be that exception.
I think saying this feels a bit weird, but you're even younger than me. I thought I was young. You're younger than me. I think you've mentioned before your on paper net worth has crossed 100 mil. You've made an acquisition of 2.5 mil. You've run multiple companies. You've sold multiple companies, all before 30, right? What kind of advice do you have for younger people entering the world today in terms of career building, in terms of chasing their dreams?
Well, Drake said, F your net worth, what's your personal funds? So, net worth is net worth. It's a paper number. So you basically like divide whatever my equity is, Pudgy Penguins, based on our recent raises, worth hundreds of millions of dollars. So that alone probably puts me at over $100 million in equity. But, I don't, the whole net worth thing is a sham. It's like, what's your personal fund? So I care about that more. But I think my advice would be, Man, just don't give up. Like, it sounds so corny. I say it all the time. You watch all my interviews, but it really just starts and stops there. Like, everyone finds success at some point. The difference between those that do and don't is, the people that don't just quit somewhere and they just stopped. Might take 1 year, might take 5 years, might take 10 years, might take 20 years, right? But you'll find it eventually. And I think being a successful entrepreneur, there's very few things more fulfilling than that.
I have one last question, and I want to bring back the conversation back to Luca. If you had to wind back the years, back in the days where, you were moving home to home with your mom, before Gel Blaster, before Pudgy all started, what would you say to young Luca who felt like he was the Naruto in the school, being the lone warrior? What would you say back to him?
Oh man, somebody asked me this a while ago. It's a good question. I would just say there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, I very much thought I was living in hell until I was like 17. Like, I genuinely was like, this is the worst life ever. I was like, probably self-defeating. So like, I was also being the victim, played the victim mentality. So probably be my other piece of advice, like, don't be the victim. If you're like, I went through a rough life, but so many people go through way rougher of lives. Like, I mean, I've heard stories where it's like pales in comparison to what I went through. And I think actually the biggest piece of advice that I think can be meaningful to people is my life changed when I stopped being the victim. I was just crying about like my life, how much it sucked, how much I hated my mom, how much I hated her for putting us in this situation. And once I turned 16 and like, I was almost 17, I realized like I can control my situation. Right. So I literally like that week I'm out of school. Weeks later, I'm working, I'm making money. And then all of a sudden, like my life changed. A year and a half later, I become a self-made millionaire. So it's just like anybody who plays the victim mentality, like you got to stay away from that. You've got to pivot from that. If you ever catch yourself feeling sorry for yourself or telling yourself a sob story, that's going to ruin you more than anything else.
It's interesting you brought that up because on one of our previous episodes, we spoke to a founder of an AI company. He used to be a school dropout. He would he wouldn't attend school, but the dots connected where he felt like he was letting down his parents, and he would make really, really small habits. He would change the color of his socks that he wears to school. He bought a brand new school bag just to put him in the right mentality. Do you remember what was that switch for you? You said something happened at
as my mom was. I took like a couple of dollars out of her wallet and like quarters, and she started crying when I came back home. That was like the switch. I was like, okay, this is over with. This is like hell. You know what I mean? I was like, dude, if I'm stealing quarters from my mom's wallet and she's crying that I stole quarters out of her wallet, is like, that's insanity. I was like, because like you try to pretend that's not as bad as it is, and then like when you see that, you're like, this is nuts. This is like, so you got to fix that.
And so today is 16th of September 2024. If people watch this on the 16th of September 2025, what's that one statement that you want people to hold you accountable to?
Oh, that's a good one. So we have a new business, which is Abstract. It's our L2 chain. We're building the consumer chain on EVM. I think it's going to be the first of its kind. We're gonna win the L2 race. So 1 year from when you listen to this, or from when this is recorded, I want you to look at Abstract and see where it ranks amongst the L2s. And if we're not at least top two, then I messed up. It's got to be top two. I think there's one that's going to be hard to beat. It's gonna be I think one is doing an amazing job. I think the rest are gonna be easy to beat. So let's see what I got. But if I do this, I go 4 for 4, and then nobody can question me, because I basically said Von Dutch would be the biggest clothing brand. You might have saw that. It did. Yep. I said Gel Blaster would be the biggest toy brand. It was. I said we would make Pudgy Penguins the number one. Yep. The face of all the things that I said Pudgy Penguins would be. We did. And now I'm saying Abstract will be the number one L2. In a year from now, if not one, then number two. If I go 4 for 4, then it's like it's insane. Yep. No one can tell me anything if we go 4 for 4. It's got to be like a real problem. So we'll see.
You heard it here first. Thanks so much for being on the show. I hope you enjoy the rest of your time in Singapore, and appreciate you coming on, Luca.
Thank you for having me.